We're actually so thrilled to kick off the winter term with all of you. I am Rose, the Health Promotion and Education Coordinator with Health Services at Algonquin College. Before we get started, I'm just gonna share a couple of housekeeping items. So this event includes live closed captions in English, and captions are available directly in the Zoom toolbar by clicking the CC icon. Also, along the bottom of the screen, you will find a chat button, and feel free to use this feature to introduce yourself and let us know what program you are in. If you have any questions for us, please type them into the Q&A tab along the bottom of your screen. We will take questions at the end of the presentation. Please also note that this session is being recorded and there will be added to the Algonquin College orientation website by the end of the week. Also, I would encourage you to visit the Health Services website and learn about our initiative, Nutrition Around the World, for more nutritious recipes and budget-friendly ones. Today also I have with me the student health promoters, Vincent and Prabhalin.
So hi to everyone. So I'm Vincent, a student health promoter with Health Services, and I am in my second year of fitness and health promotion program here at Algonquin College. Fun fact about myself is I am an aspiring and soon-to-be licensed personal trainer with Algonquin College, and I enjoy producing music in my spare time.
Okay. Hi, my name is Prableen, and I am too a student health promoter at Health Services at Algonquin College, and I am in fitness and health promotion second year, and I'm going to be an assistant coach for an ice hockey team. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent and Prableen. And we also have today with us Tatiana. Tatiana Hunt is a passionate registered dietitian working in Ottawa, Ontario, and she's here to support you in your nutrition journey, making one small, sustainable, realistic goal at a time. So she lets her take stress out of food, leaving you to focus on feeling satisfied and nourished. She practices a non-diet approach, helping clients shift their focus from weight to overall healthy lifestyle. And she has experience supporting clients with managing health conditions, repairing their relationship with food, eating for an active lifestyle, and providing a quick and easy meal plan tips. Hi, Tatiana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me virtually today. So I will be preparing a tomato basil pesto sauce and a kale Caesar salad. So I love this recipe because I'm obsessed with pasta. So I'm always searching for a new sauce to try. And right now I'm on a kick with this one. I love it because it's so nutritious and delicious, but also because it's such a great recipe to prepare at the beginning of the week and to enjoy throughout the week. So we'll get started and I will tell you a little bit about the ingredients we'll be using today. So for the roasted tomato basil pesto sauce, we'll be using 9 large Roma tomatoes, and I have already gone ahead and sliced these in half and roasted them, which we will chat about because they do take about an hour in the oven. And then I'll be using a half a cup of almonds. Now with recipes, feel free to always modify the ingredients to what you have on hand or what maybe is more budget friendly, but I will be using some roasted unsalted almonds. Now, if you had raw almonds on hand, you could roast them. And what I like to do with this recipe is right at the end of the Roma tomatoes being cooked, I like to throw in the almonds to roast up for about 8 minutes. But because I had the roasted on hand already, I saved some time and I skipped a step there. So I'll be using those as well as 2 cloves of garlic. And then I'll be using some basil. Now, my recipe does say to use fresh basil, but we do know at this time of the year, fresh produce, fresh herbs can be quite expensive, But also, if you buy a big batch, sometimes if you don't use it all up, it can go to waste if you don't freeze it right away. So I find the fresh basil in the tube as a paste, so it has a little bit of oil in there as well, is an awesome option because it lasts a lot longer. So I'll be using this one today, but feel free to use whatever basil you do have on hand. And then I will be using nutritional yeast. Now, this product is an optional ingredient. So this means you don't need a substitution, but if you have it on hand, great, you can use it. So nutritional yeast is actually not an activated yeast like yeast that rises bread. It's deactivated and it really is just used for seasoning. So it has cheesy taste. So works amazing in pasta sauces, especially if you love cheese, or to just season. I like to season my tofu with it or my chicken. And it's high in protein as well as vitamin B12. So if anyone that follows like maybe a vegan or vegetarian diet, this is an awesome way to get your vitamin B12 if you don't eat meat. Then I'll be using some extra virgin olive oil, but you can use whatever oil you do have on hand. And then salt and pepper to taste. I'll be using those. And then I have chosen, just because I have this on hand for my pasta, a whole grain rice pasta. But you can use whatever pasta you do have on hand. I do recommend a whole grain pasta if possible. So now for the kale Caesar salad, you'll need some kale, which I've already got ahead and chopped up and rinsed. So that's ready for preparation. Some Parmesan cheese, which I'm going to be using the Blue Menu one. As I said, whatever you have on hand, if you want to use the fresh or, whatever product, I just want to use up what's in my fridge before I buy more. So this is the one I'll be using today, as well as some whole grain bread. So 2 slices. I've already gone ahead and toasted mine to make croutons, or you might have croutons already in your pantry to use up. So that's perfect. But any bread works. I have a dark chia seed bread on hand, so that's what I'll be using today. So in terms of the Caesar dressing, we'll be using some plain Greek yogurt, which we'll talk more about coming up. But if there is a lactose intolerance or sensitivity to dairy, you could use skyr yogurt as well. It is 100% lactose free, so that's a great option because it's still just as creamy and thick as the Greek yogurt. We'll be using some mayo. So I'm going to be using the olive oil mayo because that's what I had on hand, but any mayo will do the trick. Then I'll be using half of a fresh lemon. You can also use lemon juice in the bottle if that's what you have on hand. But I had some lemons on hand today, but otherwise I usually do use the container lemon juice as well. So I'll be using half of that today. So again, I'll be using that extra virgin olive oil and then some balsamic vinegar. Again, any brand you have will do just perfect. Some garlic, Dijon mustard, and then some pepper. Okay, so those are the ingredients we'll be using today, and I'm going to go ahead and start prepping the pasta sauce. And as I mentioned, I have already roasted the Roma tomatoes at 400 degrees for about an hour. I always like to check on it because sometimes it might need a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, depending on your oven. So once it's starting to get a little darker around the edges of the tomatoes, nice and roasted, that's when you know they're done. I also usually put a little bit of oil and a little bit of pepper on top when I'm roasting them, just to help with the roasting process. So I'll be taking all 9 of those and putting them in the blender, and I will be mincing up the garlic and adding all the ingredients into the blender, blending up till it's a bit smooth. I like to leave a little bit of texture, so I don't blend it too smooth. And with the almonds, I actually have already gone ahead and chopped those up. And what I like to use is a coffee bean grinder. I find a coffee bean grinder so great for small ingredients that need to be chopped up, saves a lot of time. So I've gone ahead and done that, so that I will also add that to the blender. So I'm going to start doing that. So I'm going to start chopping up my garlic. And I'm going to throw that into my blender. And if you have a food processor at home, you can use a food processor as well. I just know that when I was a student, I only had a little magic bullet. So I always still stick to using my blender. It's my go-to, and I don't like to have too many different contraptions in the kitchen. So this is the one I like to use. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my Roma tomatoes over by the stove. I do like to let my Roma tomatoes cool a little bit because I will be popping them back on the stove just to heat up, but just so that it doesn't expand too much in the blender. And then, as I said, I'll be using those already pre-chopped up almonds that I'll throw in there. And if you don't have a coffee bean grinder, no worries. You can throw them in the blender beforehand or chop them up by hand, whatever is your preference. So I'll be using 2 tablespoons of the nutritional yeast. Again, if this is definitely an option, so if you don't have it, no worries. I just like it for that cheesy flavor, adds a little extra protein and a little bit extra vitamin B12. And then with the basil, it does say 1 cup of fresh, so I only use half a cup of the stir-in paste. So I use about half the quantity, but you can also add more. So I always like to taste my recipe, see how it tastes, and then add more accordingly. But so I'm gonna go ahead and add all that delicious basil. So this which gives it that fresh taste. That in there. And then a 1/4 cup of my virgin olive oil. And then some salt and pepper to taste. Then you can always add more after. So I always say start with a small amount and build up from there. And I only do a small dash of salt. And you can use kosher salt or you can use table salt, whatever you have on hand. And we'll discuss a little bit more about salt. I'm gonna go ahead and blend this and I'll be back with you shortly.
So in the meanwhile, I think we can just mention a little bit of the benefits of the ingredients. So Vincent, what do you have for us today?
All right, Rose. So we're going to start off with talking about kale. So kale is one of our planet's healthiest foods. It is a great source of vitamin A, C, and K. It could help in lowering cholesterol, reducing risk from cancers, and help in creating satiety and long-lasting energy, as it is a very fibrous food. Also, kale acted with helpful antioxidants and various minerals required in a healthy diet.
And for Greek yogurt, it is a source of protein, calcium, potassium, zinc, vitamin B6, B12. Greek yogurt texture is thicker and creamier because the liquid whey is strained out of it. Also, it contains probiotic cultures, lower lactose content, and has twice the protein content of regular yogurts. For lactose-free option, Sky yogurt is a higher protein, is higher in protein like Greek yogurt, but is also lactose-free.
So next up we have almonds. So almonds are a superfood since they're a good resource of healthy fats, proteins, fibers, and magnesium. They also contain other minerals like copper and phosphorus along with vitamin B2.
Kosher salt is a coarse salt and has a flaky structure. Usually, it does not contain anti-caking agents or added iodine.
Great. Thank you for sharing those great tips about the ingredients. So as you see here, I have blended up this sauce and now I'm just going to pop it on the stove to get it warming while we make our Greek salad. Okay, perfect. So for the Caesar salad, as I mentioned, just toast up some whole grain bread, or if you have croutons on hand, go ahead and use those. So I'm just going to be chopping them to make them into small little croutons. And I always say to go for whole grain so that we know that we have lots of fiber within that those loaves of bread. But if you do have white on hand, you can go for that as well. So as I mentioned, I've already gone ahead and chopped up the kale and gave it a good rinse. You can use a salad spinner if you have one, or just a strainer to do that. Some people like to massage their kale to make it a bit smoother, especially if you're new to kale. The texture can be a little bit harsh. So some people do really like to smooth it out. I personally love the texture of it, so I don't. So I'm just going to add those croutons to the top. And we'll go ahead and get that salad dressing going. So for the Caesar salad dressing, I have minced up the garlic already. Then we'll be using a quarter cup of the Greek yogurt, so it's nice and thick and creamy. And then we're using 2 tablespoons of the olive oil. And 1 tablespoon of the balsamic vinegar. And 1 teaspoon of the Dijon mustard. And then the 2 tablespoons of the mayo. And then we'll squeeze that half lemon, or the lemon juice that you have. You could use a lemon squeezer if you had one, but I always just love to trust my hands to do the work. There we go. And then some black pepper to taste. Depending on your taste buds, you might like less or more. So go ahead. And then I'll just be whisking that up. And once that's whisked up, it's a nice creamy Caesar dressing. And I'll add that to my salad. So for a tip, if you are going to make this salad for the week, I recommend to keep the dressing in a separate container so that it doesn't make your kale go soggy, as well as the bread. So I would say just keep it in a container in the fridge and add it as you eat the salad. If you're going to serve it and eat it on the spot, then go ahead and mix it into the salad. So because I do plan to use this salad dressing for a couple of days, I'm going to keep mine in this container in the fridge, but feel free to do what works best for you. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top of my salad here. As you see, we have the croutons, the Parmesan cheese, and then I'll add the dressing, which I'll show you at the end. So while the pasta sauce is heating up, Rose, did you want to chat a little bit about meal planning?
Sure, Tatiana. So I really like the tip that you have provided. So having those portions into the fridge, I actually find it so helpful for me to do something like that. So I usually portion some food and put it into the fridge. And since it's a pre-made, I feel that it's much easier for me because usually I have 2 children, so I'm short in time, and it's really helpful for me just to grab anything from the fridge that's already prepared and nutritious rather than picking other options. So do you have other meal planning tips for us as well?
Of course. So exactly, Rose. Planning ahead is the key to success. So I always say there's 4 factors to having a successful week, and that is plan, shop, prep, and eat. So for the planning stages, that's when you want to sit down, kind of figure out what your taste buds are wanting that week. Maybe you're having some cravings. Maybe you're like me and must have a pasta dish each week. Check your inventory, see what you have in the fridge. So is there anything that is going to go bad next week you need to use up? Or maybe there's things in your pantry that you've seen that have been sitting there for a while and you're like, okay, it's time that I explore with these ingredients and use them. So just really getting that planning in place. So once we say, if you have a plan in place and then get the ingredients, you're more likely to consume nutritious and balanced meals and not skip meals because you've already done the brunt work at the beginning of the week. I always say, do it when you are not busy or, after you come home from a long day of work. The last thing you want to do is think about meal planning or prepping. So have a plan in place, get that grocery list made, and then go to the store and do your shop and stick to that grocery shop list. And then when you get home, you can do the prep to the extent of, planning all the meals for the week and making them into dividing them up into the fridge. Or if you find that that's a little too much for you, you can always do a little bit of the prep to help yourself for when you go to have cook the meal. So things like maybe cutting up and washing your vegetables and fruits so they're in the fridge and ready to go just to throw into a pan to saute. Or maybe it's making a big batch of a grain. So maybe a big batch of quinoa at the beginning of the week that you can use throughout your meals. Or it could be as simple as making this pasta sauce and having that in the fridge. But when you go to have the meal, maybe you're going to boil the noodles then, or maybe you're going to make the salad then. But doing a little bit of the prep work, because then you're going to be more successful throughout the week in eating these balanced meals. And it also helps keep you on a budget, which we'll chat more about. And then the most important one is to make sure you eat and enjoy the food. So if you have everything prepped in your fridge and ready to go, you're more likely going to eat it and you're not going to want to waste those ingredients and all that time spent prepping. So 4 keys to success is plan, shop, prep, and eat.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. I really like going to grocery and having a list and sticking to that list. So if I go to the grocery while I'm really hungry, it's like having more of choices to grab anything in my way is more, I think, less doable when I am going with a certain list and sticking to that grocery shopping list. So I really thank you for those tips. So plan, shop, prep, and eat. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Another helpful tip was to learn how to read labels. I learned this in Nutrition Facts and List of Ingredients. I didn't know previously that ingredients are listed according to their weight from highest to lowest count. So I must pay attention to ingredients in order to make a mindful decision of the intake of nutrients we want to limit, such as hydrogenated fats, and added sugars. Would you provide us with some quick tips about reading food labels, Tatiana?
Yes, of course. So reading labels is so important to know that if we're making a mindful decision and to be more aware of what is going into our bodies. So the nutrition facts label and the ingredients list are the 2 spots that are actually regulated by Health Canada. So it's information you can trust. On the front of a package, anything can be marketed in a certain way to make something seem maybe more nutritious or more delicious or whatever it may be. So Health Canada really regulates that nutrition facts label and that ingredients list. So the first thing I want you to think about when you're looking at a nutrition facts label is how much the portion size is, because the rest of those numbers are going to be based on that portion size. So that being said, if you're going to eat double the portion size or half the portion size, you need to make sure that you're modifying or altering the numbers below to reflect how much you're eating. So the percentage down the sides are considered your percent daily value of that nutrient. So we have found out that the majority of Canadians have about 2,000 calories per day. So these numbers are based on those 2,000 calories. Now, I know we all eat different amounts, maybe even different days of the week we eat different amounts. So don't worry too much about the amount of calories, but more so that just knowing that those are based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So these percentages are a good rule of thumb to help us determine if this ingredient is something that we want to use more often, or maybe we should be more mindful of using. So for a rule of thumb, anything that has 15% or more is considered a lot of that ingredient, and anything that is 5% or less is considered a little amount of that ingredient. So for things that we're trying to be mindful of, like we had mentioned, so saturated and trans fat and sodium, those ones are something we want to be more mindful of. So those ones are the ones we want to try and aim to see 5% or less. Whereas something like fiber or vitamin C or iron, that would be something we want to see 15% or more. So when we're in the grocery store and we're looking at two different products, we can use that rule of thumb to help us make a nutritious decision as to what one we might want to use more often. So in terms of the ingredients list, as Vincent said, yeah, it is labeled from the highest to the lowest. So we know if the first ingredient is sugar, then we know the main source, main component of that ingredient or that package is sugar. So that's where we can make a mindful decision.
Thank you for the information. I had one question. What about learning how to stretch your food budget? Are there some tips you want to share?
Yes, of course. So as mentioned before, planning ahead is going to really help you stick to a budget because you're going to be able to use up what's in your fridge. But also, like we mentioned with Rose, is that if you have a grocery list that you planned ahead, when you go to the grocery store, you can stick to that list and not stray from buying other things, which then makes you not stick to your budget. The other thing you can do is check for flyer items. So when you're in that planning stage, check the flyer items to see what's on sale that week, because then you can use those in your recipes and really get, a good prices for things. The other thing you can do is buy on the reduced rack. I know a lot of people worry that the quality of the food won't be the same, but we are not allowed to sell anything in the grocery store that isn't quality. So that 50% rack, you're going to get something for a cheaper item or cheaper cost, and then you can use that either the night of when you're doing your prep, or you can throw it in the freezer to use at a later date. Another thing is to compare the unit price. So if you're looking at two products, maybe in bulk and not bulk, you can compare the unit price that will be on the label of on the label the price tag will tell you how much it costs per unit, and then that way you can determine maybe you want to buy bulk because that unit price is better. But keep in mind, bulk is not always the better bang for your buck. So you really got to dive deep and compare those unit costs. So how much are you getting for what price? And then the other thing you can do is go meatless once or twice a week, because meat is very, very expensive and plant-based proteins are actually a lot cheaper. So therefore, if you have more meatless meals, you're going to be able to save more money. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and finish up the recipe. So I am going to grab the sauce off the stove and add it to my noodles. So you can see here, you can really see the green basil popping out to give it some nice color. I always like to put a couple almonds on top for a nice presentation. And if you have fresh basil, you could definitely throw a couple leaves of fresh basil on top as well. So if you're trying to impress somebody, you can always do it that way. But the other thing is you always want your food to look good as well. Presentation means everything because your brain sees it as delicious if it's gorgeous. So there is the pasta sauce on the noodles there. And then I'll make my side salad and then I'll taste test it and tell you guys all about how it tastes. And then you can make the recipe at home and let me know what you think. So as I mentioned, I'm going to add the dressing to the portion that I want so that I can keep it for the rest of the week and not have it make my lettuce soggy. So I always like to add a little bit of extra Parmesan cheese on top because I love my cheese. The other thing you could add is a little bit of nutritional yeast as well, because again, it has that cheesy flavor. So anytime you use Parmesan cheese, you can really substitute and use nutritional yeast or in addition to. So there is the kale Greek salad all done and ready. So I am going to take a taste. And as I said, I like my kale to have a little bit more texture to it. So I will find this kale a little bit tougher, and I like things when they're a little bit tougher. But if you don't, then just go ahead and smooth it out with your hands, the leaves. So just giving the massage to the leaves, and it will give you a softer texture. The other thing to be mindful is if your body's not used to something, always start in small amounts and work your way up to give your body time to recognize it. I'm going to have a nice bite of this kale salad. So I would argue that this is better than a Caesar salad that you would get, you know, in the dressing in a tube. But you guys will have to try it and let me know what you think. In terms of the pasta sauce, if you are going to make it for the week, I recommend that you keep the pasta sauce separate to the noodles so that noodles also don't go soggy. And then just heat it up when you need it and add it to your pasta noodles. And depending on how much sauce you like, you can determine how much you're going to put with the noodles. But you give it a bite. You really taste that fresh basil in there, and it's a very smooth texture. I like to keep the almonds a little bit chunkier, so there's a little bit of a crunch and texture to it. But wow, that is so delicious and so fresh. I can't wait for you guys to try this recipe.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. Actually, you're tasting the recipe, but you're encouraging us to do it maybe today. I want to also taste it as well. But I think, as you mentioned, I'm not used to kale, for example, but I'm used to lettuce, spinach more. But still, are there any substitutes of kale, for example, in this salad? Can we use the same garnishing and sauce with other ingredients?
Of course, yes. So you don't have to pick kale. I just love kale to switch it up because I use so much spinach. So I like to use kale as well. But you could use spinach, you could use Roma lettuce, you could use iceberg, whatever you prefer, and maybe whatever you have on hand. And this dressing can go on anything. So if you like dressing with your chicken, maybe you use this recipe for the chicken to dip in later, or maybe in your fries or whatever it may be. This dressing you can use wherever you'd like. I just really like using it with a kale salad. I think it pairs really nicely with it. But I've also done it with spinach as well, and it was just as delicious.
Thank you. Good to know. So now we're opening the platform to any questions. So if you have any question, please type it into the Q&A tab. I think we received one question previously from Sylvia. I missed the part of how long you roasted the Roma tomatoes. How long?
Perfect. So the recipe does say about an hour and 10 minutes. I usually find I have a quite strong oven and it's very hot. So I usually only do it from around 50 minutes to an hour. Today was actually a full hour, but I just like to watch it. And once you see it kind of getting brown around the edges, nice and roasted on the tomato, that's when you know to pull them out. And they will kind of look a little bit flat as the liquid kind of drains out of them. But that's perfect. And that juiciness will just go right into your pasta. So put them all into the blender and blend them up.
Sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just seeing if we have any other questions. If not, Vincent and Purpaline, do you have other questions?
Nothing on my end, Rose. No, thank you.
I had one question, but it's regarding the nutrition labels. They say that sometimes the company hide some things from the nutrition label so as to make the product look healthier. Is that so?
Yeah, so legally, no, all companies have to tell you exactly what is in their product on the ingredients list. So as I've mentioned, Health Canada regulates that nutrition facts label and that ingredients list. So everything has to be honest and true. And it goes through some testing to make sure, and it has to be approved by Health Canada before it can even go to the shelf. So if there was something in there that wasn't listed on the ingredients list, then it wouldn't be approved to go to retail stores. But great question. Yeah, I actually do get that often because marketing can do an amazing job at trying to make something look super nutritious and delicious, but those are the only two spots that you for sure can trust and know that it's reliable information.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Tatiana, I'm wondering if we can also speak about the front label. Is it something changing? Are companies allowed to post anything on the front label, or is it different from the back label?
Yeah, so they can make certain claims, and their Health Canada has a list of claims that they can make. But in order to make a claim, they do have to fall within a category. So, for example, if something said 25% less sodium, that 25% less sodium is comparing to their own product, their original product. So that's when they can make that claim. Or if they want to say it's a good source of something, there are some limitations that they have to be in to be able to say it's a good source. So they can make claims and they can kind of play with it. That's why I say marketing is doing an amazing job if they make something look nutritious and delicious on the front. But it's all compared to their own products, and it's not, so if it's 25% less sodium, it doesn't mean it's still a great choice in terms of the sodium being less than 5%. It's just saying that that 25% is lower than their usual product. But they can kind of have a little freedom to do what they want on the front, and Health Canada is working towards trying to make that a little bit more strict. But at this time, I would love for you only to really trust the nutrition facts label in the ingredients list. And that's when you're going to find out the most information and be able to dive a little bit deeper in understanding it. Another thing, like no added sugar or sugar-free, those claims can be made if they're not using any additive sugar. So the sugar in it is maybe a sugar alcohol or an artificial sweetener. So those do not raise our blood sugars, and they don't have a caloric component to it. So but they still have that sweet taste. So that's when they can make those claims. But again, there are some rules and regulations to be able to make that claim, but they can be used at the company's discretion.
Sounds great. And I have one personal question about the nutritional yeast. So I didn't know about it previously, and once I tasted, it's like sort of cheese, give you that cheese taste. So what else we can use it in? Like I know with, for example, plant-based pasta sauce, we can use like cashew along with some nutritional yeast. What other recipes this could work in?
Yeah, so as I said, anywhere you would like a cheesy flavor, you can put it there. So I know a lot of my clients love to just sprinkle it on toast because they like a cheesy flavor on toast instead of like maybe cream cheese, or inside their grilled cheese sandwich, they'll sprinkle it in, especially if you're, as I mentioned, if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you do usually lack vitamin B12. So this is a great source to get it. As I said, I love using it as a seasoning on top of my tofu when I'm roasting it in the oven, or even on top of my chicken. I think it goes really nice with meatballs as well as that Parmesan cheese. So substituting anywhere you see Parmesan cheese, you can also use this. And what's great about this is it brings up that protein content. And if we think of protein, protein really helps us feel satisfied and full after a meal, and helps us from overeating at our meals. So especially for a vegan or a vegetarian that might struggle to get enough protein from their plant-based sources, this is a good way to just top up that protein. So if you look at a nutrition facts label, anything that has 8 grams or more of protein is considered a significant amount of protein. So we usually aim for about 20 to 30 grams at each meal, but 8 grams or more is significant to be able to count it as a source at a snack. And also if you were to pair this with, say, some cashews, like you mentioned, or even this pasta sauce where we have almonds in it as our protein source, this would help bring up that protein content. So yeah, as I mentioned, you can use it really wherever you want. I sometimes roast chickpeas and use this as the flavoring. Yeah, on toast, in your sauces, anywhere you would use Parmesan cheese. I say the sky is the limit. You can use it wherever. There's no rules to food. It's what your preference is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So if we don't have any other question, so Tatiana, do you want to add anything to the end before we finish?
No, just thank you so much for having me today, guys. If you do have any questions, feel free to contact me via email or through Facebook or my Instagram. I always am posting new recipes on there as well if you want to go have a look. But I'm always happy to help with any questions or comments. I'm always here for you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. If you are interested in joining another virtual AC Day 1 session today, please reference the AC Day 1 magazine that was emailed to you previously and select the activities that interest you and work with your schedule. And thank you again, everyone. I would encourage you to visit the Health Services website, the Healthy Promotion page, and learn about our other initiatives and activities. Thank you, everyone.